birthday, dear Bridget. Happy birthday to me.
Happy 40th birthday to you. Happy 40th birthday to you. Okay. Reset, please. Thank you.
Less old, more childhood. So, nice memorial, as memorials go.
I'm quite sure you're ready.
May I?
Up on A, sorry.
Okay. Okay, ready? Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to grab you.
This becomes Chris now. Just
Sweet fireplace salt. Thank you.
okay, come down a bit on there, Chris, I think where we were.
It's Jack.
Oh my God! It's the guy from Starbucks!
3, 2, 1, next.
What's his reactions on one? One take.
What about the Quant family bloodline?
What do you do? Two.
Any skeletons in the closet, genetic defects, sexual deviance, criminal records,
Four.
serial killers?
4. Good.
Okay, coming out of the VT and 5, 4. Remember the gear shift.
Give me a mix on this graphic and mix Miranda Q.
I have to say, it's fantastic that you're getting on so well. Because you have a lot in common.
Dad, I presume? Yes. Nice to meet you. So glad you could be here. This is a unique and wonderful moment. Now, before we start, would you like to know the sex?
Oh, I'm not sure. It's such a big decision. Should we? Shouldn't we?
I'm not sure.
Actually, yes, let's.
This is Dad, I presume. Pleased to meet you. So glad you could be here. This is a unique and wonderful moment. Is you back from your many business trips, then?
But
So before we start, would you like to know the sex?
I don't know. Can't decide.
maybe we should prepare.
So, this is Dad, I presume?
Yeah,
Pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So glad you could be here. This is a unique and wonderful moment. before we start, would you like to know the sex?
Oh, I'm not sure. Such a big decision. Should we? Shouldn't we?
I'm not sure.
Actually, yes. We're getting out. Ready?
No, Bridget. Bridget.
I don't think I can.
This is a two-man job. I can do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. It's a two-man job. Take her. Take her. Get her. You gotta help me. Don't drop her.
Shall we find out? Come along, you two. Time for a little test. So exciting, isn't it? It's like the final of the X Factor. Dial 01 if you want it to be Jack and 02 if you want it to be Mark.
I think she's an every woman. You know, she's authentic and she's flawed, and her optimism and her determination to succeed in spite of her sort of, I don't know, failings or her imperfection is inspiring. And I think it's made her a really beloved character. Part of what is so appealing about revisiting a Bridget Jones experience is revisiting her world and her friends and her family and that familiarity, and it is all there. Trying to discover the same person at a different time in her life and finding what's relatable about her as her life has moved on. I think that's a unique and kind of exciting thing to explore. A character that people related to 16 years ago, and would she possibly speak to people who've also moved on with this character later in life. And yeah, it was a fun thing to get to do. Jack's American, and he's an entrepreneur who's started his own company, I think it's a dating website. He's an author, and he's a little unconventional. He's a little more adventurous than maybe Mark Darcy. He's probably the polar opposite of Mark Darcy in many respects, and a new prospect for our Bridget. I think she shares Bridget Jones, the character's sensibilities. I think she is Bridget Jones in many ways. So when we're filming, you know, I don't know, having her there, her sense of humor and the things she laughs at and the way we discuss how it's going to come together and what we'd like to see happen, it seems to bring her to life. This character, somewhere between Helen Fielding and Sharon and myself, she seems to just kind of show up. And we have a shorthand, and we share the same sense of humor, so it's just, it's a joy. I mean, what a blessing. I was really glad that she wanted to come back and do this one.
Mark seems to be doing what he's always done, which is noble and possibly rather perilous endeavours to solve human rights issues. He's clearly a brilliant lawyer and a very successful one. But I don't think this is particularly underlined in our story, but I think he's on the verge of being a bit jaded with it. And he's definitely romantically disappointed. We find him married, or at the end of a marriage which clearly has not worked. I think what we're seeing is that there's a marriage where there's affection, but it doesn't really have much fire in it. Bridget who always seems to me the most wonderful paradox between utter hopelessness and incredible competence. I think that she's obviously, there's a clownishness to her. Failing to, or the fire station and the going up and down the pole and all the pratfalls and all the, the potential for humiliation, which is always lurking. She still plows on. She still is capable. She still resolves her issues. Or if she doesn't, she never, ever gives up for very long. I think the actors just, I think, so readily respond to her. She's of this world. She's one of the figures on which Helen Fielding based one of the characters. So it's not just that she knows it so well, it's that her heart is so much at the centre of it. I mean, you couldn't find anyone else to approximate that. Renée is also, I think possibly more than any other actor I've ever known, is a trooper. She's perpetually buoyant, indefatigable. The rest of us can be, wanting to tear our heads off with fatigue at 4 a.m. And the one person that still seems to be laughing and smiling and chatting and cheering other people up and looking after people is Renée. I remember seeing this 15 years ago, and that's still how it is.
We come back to Bridget at the age of, 43. She's sorted quite a lot out. She's been through quite a lot. She has experienced what my grandmother used to say was really one's heart is no use as a heart unless it's been broken at least 10 times. So she's had her heartbreaks and she's quite happy in herself. And of course, that's the moment at which this great big thing happens to her. So it's not as it were a midlife crisis, but it's the beginning of that second part of life, which actually can be an extraordinarily new lease. Dr. Rawlings is a rather lovely character because I've conceived of her as a sort of army brat, so she's very good at short-term relationships, She's also a single mother and has brought up her children on her own, and she is at first slightly suspicious of Bridget and a little bit judgmental, if I'm honest. But as she gets to know her over the 9-month period, because of course when you are a prima gravidad and you're elderly, they have to take a lot more scans and have to check up on you a lot more. And she gets to know her and she gets to understand that there are these two possible fathers, which is just, a very modern problem. Well, it's probably not modern at all. It's actually an ancient, not necessarily even a problem. It's just one of those things. And she becomes much more sympathetic to Bridget and by the end is tremendously excited and can't wait to find out which one it is. Working with Renée Zellweger is such a joy because she's just a delightful person and bright and brilliant and sort of better at being Bridget than I can imagine anyone being, because she's got the capacity to act that kind of slightly scatty thing, which she isn't at all, actually, in herself.
Jack is a very successful man who has created an online dating service. And he's in England promoting his book at one of the music festivals, and he accidentally trips upon her, if you will, and that begins their relationship. Working with Colin, Renée, and Emma Thompson and watching their process, I mean, they've all won Academy Awards, which is remarkable, and they have such grace and openness and creativity amongst them. It's really fun to be around that and to learn from them and to be inspired by them. Mark Darcy's the quintessential English, right? And then Jack is the quintessential American. And in that is two opposing ideas and philosophies that challenge each one. And both are valid and both are important. And I think they come to learn that over time. And it's been fun really trying to find that, you know, and how do we make these characters sympathetic and vulnerable, but yet strong at the same time. And what are their wants and aspirations for Bridget and for the baby? And that's sort of, I think, a fresh take on, you know, a romantic comedy. I think people love Bridget because she's identifiable, and she is someone that you have empathy for, and she's accessible. She's not someone who's out of reach or out of touch. She's attainable in a sense of, like, for a woman and for a man in many ways, which is nice and different for, you know, people to go and see, and certainly for young women and older women and people of this generation. You know, she's a deeply flawed, vulnerable, loving, strong woman.
Sharon Maguire is one of my all-time favourite directors. She's so funny, and she's so to the point without being mean, and she's got a real edge, and yet she's incredibly romantic. There's something about her getting things wrong that makes it okay when you get things wrong in your own life. It's incredibly warm. It's people who love each other more than they love things. People who love their friendship group and their family in spite of their faults, and more than they want to achieve things or gain things or possess things. It's the British sense of humour in its most, I think, sparkliest and kindest form.
So Miranda Fried is a news anchor, so she's the sort of face of the programme, and it's an interesting role because she presents quite serious news, but there is a pressure on her to kind of modernise and make the show more relevant, and a new manager comes in and tries to shake things up. So she's sort of caught between delivering serious highbrow news and doing pieces about whether sofas give you cancer. The dynamic is kind of Miranda's role is introducing Bridget into Tinder or music festivals and kind of new young things, I guess. And she takes great relish in bringing Bridget into her world.
We like the idea that she likes to think she's the new improved Bridget in this one. And I think that's what Renée went with, that when we first meet her, we see her in, well, obviously, you know, when we first meet her in the workplace in this one, I think it's quite a different Bridget. It's a very authoritative Bridget. She's, you know, striding through the office, West Wing style, you know, doling out orders. And you think, wow, okay, she's got it sussed, you know, however, that doesn't last very long. Because her personal life will always intrude on her work life, as it does for all of us, and she'll screw up. Mark Darcy is obviously based on Pride and Prejudice's Mr. Darcy, and he has many of the same qualities. He's haughty, he's disapproving, he's patriarchal, yummy. So all those things that make Mr. Darcy, Mark Darcy is as well, except our Mark Darcy is a human rights lawyer. He's a bit of a workaholic, doesn't mix in company very easily, socially inept, actually. But Bridget knows Mark Darcy from home, so he is home to her. Enter Jack Quant, Patrick Dempsey, where we really wanted to find an all-American male for this one, and we chose Patrick Dempsey, and thankfully he chose us because he is He does seem to encompass that sort of all-American maleness, but with a sort of tongue-in-cheek humour, so that was essential. Jack is a little bit more new age than Mark, and he's very much about trying to be there and trying to listen and to be caring, and which Mark will find very irritating because he's very much a sort of head in the sand, socially inept, workaholic. He's only happy if he's saving other people's lives. He's not very touchy-feely. So I kind of think that was important as they begin to find the other rather irritating. We knew we had this festival scene, and so we were working out who was going to play at the festival. And so we managed to get Ed Sheeran involved very early on, and then once we got him to agree that we could film him singing on stage, etc., then we sort of moved in and said, will you be in the film and be in this scene? And he and his people agreed, and Dan Mazer wrote a really, I think, a really funny scene for him. And what do you know, he came in and he could act.
Hey, did you like that video? Well, I've got some movie trivia for you. Did you know that, like Facebook, Star Wars was originally prefixed by the definite article the? Much cleaner without it, don't you think? For this and more movie facts, click on more videos, or for more trailers, click on the playlist.